I saw your comment and it made me stop for a moment. You know, in life, we move fast, too fast. We scroll, we swipe, we skip ahead without really seeing each other. But then, every once in a while, something small, something simple reaches out and grabs your heart, and your comment did that. It reminded me that love isn't always a grand gesture. Sometimes it's a few honest words, typed in a quiet moment, words that carry warmth, hope, and a little piece of someone's soul. And when we notice those moments, when we let them land, we realize something powerful. Love is still here. Connection is still real. And every kind thought we share has the ability to lift someone up, even if we don't know it. So today, I want to talk about that, about how love grows in the smallest spaces, and how noticing each other can change everything. I saw your comment, and for a moment, everything just slowed down. You know how life can be. A stream of noise, motion, distractions, moments flying past like they're trying to escape us. But then there was this pause, like the world took a breath and handed me something soft, something human, something real. It's strange how a few words can do that, how they can slip past all the walls we build, all the armor we wear, all the ways we pretend we're invincible, and they land right there, somewhere inside the heart, in a place we don't always visit, a place we sometimes forget we even have. Your comment did that. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't trying to impress or demand or prove. It just existed with this quiet truth, this warmth that felt like a hand reaching out, not to pull me anywhere, not to push me to be anything, but simply to say, I see you. And that is one of the most powerful things any of us can experience. Being seen, really seen. Not for what we show the world, not for the mask or the posture or the perfect angle, but for the small things. Our hesitations, our intentions, our imperfections, our attempts to love even when it's hard. And I think that's what struck me. There's a kind of love that doesn't need a declaration or a ceremony. It doesn't need a performance. Love can be present in the simplest act of noticing. It can live in paying attention. It can exist in a comment, a message, a moment where someone chooses to look, chooses to reach out, chooses to connect, even if they don't realize that's what they've done. And when I saw your words, that's what they felt like, connection. A small bridge between two hearts that may never have met otherwise, and yet here we are, sharing something invisible but unmistakably alive. Love, real love, isn't about fireworks. It's about presence. It's about awareness. It's about choosing to care in a world that constantly encourages us to look away, to move on, to scroll past, to detach. But you didn't look away. You didn't scroll past. You didn't detach. Instead, you offered a moment of yourself. You offered sincerity. You offered a glimpse into what you felt, what you saw, what you appreciated. And I want you to know that mattered. It mattered more than you might ever guess. Because sometimes people forget that their words hold weight. They forget that the things they say can become little anchors of hope for someone else. They forget that their kindness can interrupt someone's loneliness. They forget that a simple gesture can lift someone out of a difficult moment or bring them back to themselves when they've drifted too far away. But when I read your comment, I remembered. I remembered that love doesn't always arrive with an orchestra. Sometimes it walks in quietly, sits beside you, and lets you breathe again. I think about how many people move through life feeling unseen, unheard, unnoticed, how many carry their stories in silence, waiting for someone to care enough to ask, to listen, to acknowledge, and it amazes me how a handful of words can become something meaningful, something healing, something that opens a window inside someone who thought all the windows were closed. Your comment was one of those windows. It let a bit of light in. It reminded me that even in the vastness of this world that can feel so overwhelming, so disconnected, there are still moments of genuine human warmth. Moments where love finds a way to speak without announcing itself. It's strange, isn't it? How we can connect with someone we've never met, how we can feel something real from something so simple. But that's the beauty of being human. We're built for connection. We're wired for meaning. We're made to feel, to care, to love. Even if the world tells us to toughen up, to guard our hearts, to move fast, there's this quiet truth inside us that still longs to be held, to be understood, to be valued. And when someone sees us, truly sees us, it's like the universe whispers, you matter. You're not alone. Maybe you didn't intend to create a moment like that. Maybe you were just sharing a thought, expressing a feeling, doing something that felt natural to you. But that's the thing about love. It doesn't always know when it's being loved. It doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it's just who you are effortlessly. Sometimes it's the the softness you carry without realizing it. Sometimes it's the honesty you offer because that's how your heart works. And sometimes, like with your comment, it's a simple reflection of your sincerity shining through in a world that often forgets sincerity exists. And when I saw your words, they lingered. They carried a warmth that didn't fade quickly. They made me think about the people who leave notes in our lives, small moments that stay with us, reminders that kindness still exists, that appreciation still exists, that connection still exists. It made me think about how love can show up unexpectedly, disguised as encouragement, understanding, gratitude, or even just a moment of clarity expressed in text. And I found myself grateful. Grateful for your presence, even if brief. Grateful for your words, even if simple. Grateful for the feeling they inspired, even if quiet. There's something beautiful about realizing that someone took time out of their life, out of everything they're dealing with, everything they're hoping for, everything they're afraid of, to say something kind. Time is one of the most precious things we have, and when someone chooses to spend a piece of it on you, that's love in one of its purest forms. Not the grand cinematic kind. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that whispers instead of shouts. The kind that doesn't try to possess or impress, the kind that simply acknowledges the truth of what it sees. When I think about love, I think about small moments just like this. Moments where someone gives you a piece of their heart without expecting anything in return. Moments where you feel connected without anyone forcing the connection. Moments where words become something more than symbols. They become touch, comfort, understanding. And your comment felt like one of those moments, one of those gentle reminders that even in the noise of life, there are still quiet places where care can be heard. It made me think about you, about the kind of person you must be to express something that carries warmth, kindness, honesty. It made me wonder what experiences shaped you, what moments taught you how to care, what memories built the heart behind your words. Because hearts don't just appear like that, they're formed. They're sculpted through the things we've survived, the things we've learned, the ways we've loved, the ways we've been broken, and still found the courage to love anyway. And I felt that. I felt the sincerity in your comment. I felt the humanness in it, the gentle pulse of vulnerability and truth. And maybe that's the most beautiful part. Love always carries a little vulnerability with it. It takes courage to express kindness. It takes openness to notice someone else. It takes heart to share something real in a world that often pushes us toward detachment. But you chose to share. You chose to reach out. You chose to offer a moment of connection. And that choice matters more than you might realize. Because sometimes all someone needs is to feel that someone else understands them, values them, acknowledges them. Sometimes that's all it takes to restore a bit of faith in humanity or in themselves. And your words had that effect. They reminded me that even when life is heavy, even when days feel long, even when the world becomes complicated, there is still love in the smallest interactions, still meaning in the quietest moments, still hope in the simplest gestures. I saw your comment, and in it, I felt something honest, something gentle, something that made me pause and breathe a little deeper. It made me appreciate the unseen connections between people, the invisible threads that tie us together in ways we don't always understand. It made me appreciate you, not for any grand reason, not for any dramatic gesture, but for that small, sincere act that reflected something beautifully human. And I think that's where love lives, in the unnoticed, in the subtle, in the moments that don't demand attention but deserve it, in the kindness we give without expectation, in the vulnerability we share without fear, in the ways we reach out even when we don't realize we're reaching. And your comment reminded me of that. It reminded me that love doesn't always arrive with certainty or structure. Sometimes it arrives quietly, wrapped in a few words, carrying more weight than the sender ever intended. I want you to know that I saw your comment, not just with my eyes, but with something deeper, something that recognizes sincerity when it finds it, something that appreciates softness when it appears, something that understands love, not as a dramatic expression, but as a gentle offering. Your words were a moment of light, a moment of connection, a moment that lingered long after I finished reading them. And I'm grateful, truly, because love, in all its forms, deserves to be acknowledged, even when it appears as there's something profoundly human about the quiet moments we rarely acknowledge, moments when the world softens just a little, when something gently reaches inside you and reminds you how capable you are of loving and being loved. When I think about keeping a tone that's loving, soft, reflective, and intimate, I think about how many pieces of ourselves we hide from the world because we fear being misunderstood or overlooked or taken for granted. But even in that fear, there's always a part of us that still wants to speak softly, to feel deeply, to connect honestly. So when I speak in this tone, what I'm really doing is opening that quiet part of the heart, the part that listens, the part that remembers, the part that still hopes even when it's tired. And I want to stay in that space with you, the space where nothing has to be rushed or forced or polished, a space where words can simply fall into place, carried by sincerity instead of perfection, intention instead of performance. Love isn't just romance or fireworks or declarations made under bright lights. Love is presence, it's attention, it's the willingness to pause long enough to notice something small and allow it to matter. It's the courage to articulate a feeling even when the world tells you that vulnerability is weakness. It's the act of letting yourself care, even if caring has cost you something in the past. And so this keynote, the tone you wanted, lives in that gentle space between expression and emotion, where the heart speaks a little quieter but also a little truer. It's soft because real love never has to be loud to be felt. It's reflective because love makes us look both inward and outward, asking what we've learned and what we're willing to offer. It's intimate because there's no other way for love to be real. And it's loving because without love, none of this would matter. There's something sacred about speaking softly, like the words themselves know they're carrying something delicate. When you speak softly, you're offering trust. You're saying, here, this is a part of me. I don't give it often, but I'm giving it now. And when someone listens in the same softness, the moment becomes something alive, something warm. The world is loud enough already. Softness becomes an act of love. Softness doesn't mean fragility. In fact, softness is one of the strongest things a human being can offer. It takes strength to stay gentle in a world that can be harsh. It takes bravery to keep a loving heart after it's been broken. It takes depth to listen rather than react, to understand rather than judge, to hold space rather than fill silence. Softness is not about being untouched by life's challenges. It's about being shaped by them in a way that keeps your humanity intact. A loving tone comes from a place of recognition. It recognizes the truth of what someone is feeling, even if the words they speak are simple. It recognizes the effort behind their actions, even if the action itself is small. It recognizes that we all carry stories, that we all carry memories, that we all carry pieces of ourselves that we're still learning how to share. Love listens not to the volume of someone's voice, but to the tremor within it. It hears the real message beneath the practiced one. And to speak reflectively means you're willing to look back, not with regret or longing, but with understanding. It means you're willing to let your past teach you instead of define you. It means you're willing to sit with your emotions instead of running from them. Reflection is love turned inward. It's the heart saying, let me make sense of how I've grown. Intimacy isn't always physical. In fact, the deepest intimacy often arrives through presence, through sincerity, through the willingness to reveal something true about yourself. When someone speaks in an intimate tone, they're not trying to convince or impress. They're simply allowing you to see them as they are. And allowing yourself to be seen is one of the most profound acts of love. When I extend this keynote, I want every sentence to feel like a gentle breath, something that doesn't rush past you but settles around you, like the feeling of someone sitting beside you without needing anything, without expecting anything, simply offering warmth through their presence. I want it to feel like the kind of moment that stays with you because it wasn't forced, because it was honest, because it felt human in a way that so many things don't. Love often speaks in the moments between words. It's in the quiet pauses, the soft sighs, the slow breaths that carry more truth than sentences ever could. It's in the stillness where someone feels safe enough to simply exist without performance. When you speak in a loving, reflective tone, you're giving space for those silences. You're saying, it's okay, you don't have to rush. I'm here. And that simple act can feel like a sanctuary. To love gently is to understand that every heart has its own history, every heart has been bruised, every heart has had moments of breaking, and yet, every heart still carries hope, even if it's hidden beneath layers of caution. When you speak gently, you acknowledge that history without prying into it. You respect that people give pieces of themselves in their own time, in their own way, and you let the softness you offer become an invitation rather than an expectation. Reflection brings clarity. It allows us to sift through our past with compassion instead of criticism. It gives us permission to forgive ourselves, to accept the moments where we didn't know better, to appreciate the moments where we did, and to recognize the ways we've changed. Reflection is not about dwelling, it's about understanding, and understanding is a form of love. Intimacy grows in the spaces where two people give each other the freedom to be real, not perfect, not polished, just real. When someone allows you to see them without their defenses, without their masks, without their practiced smiles, they're offering you something rare. They're offering trust. And trust is one of the most intimate gifts we can receive. In a loving tone, the world becomes a little softer, it becomes a little slower, it becomes a little more imaginable. When someone speaks to you with love, it doesn't matter what the topic is, you feel understood, you feel valued, you feel like your presence matters. Love validates without conditions. It listens without trying to fix, it holds without trying to cage, it comforts without trying to control. To speak softly is to speak honestly. It's to let the words come from the heart rather than the mind. The heart doesn't calculate, it doesn't strategize, it doesn't manipulate, it simply expresses. And when you speak from that place, even the simplest sentence becomes meaningful. There's a warmth that comes from sincerity. When someone speaks with sincerity, their words feel lived in, real, connected to something deeper than surface level emotion. Sincerity carries weight not because it's heavy, but because it's grounded. It's anchored in truth, and truth is one of the most intimate forms of connection. When I keep this tone, I imagine sitting across from someone whom matters. Not in a loud room, not surrounded by distractions, but in a quiet space where the moment feels like its own world. I imagine speaking slowly, not because I'm searching for words, but because I want each one to land softly, because I want them to feel like they were chosen with care, because I want the person listening to know they're not just hearing words, they're receiving a part of my heart. To love softly means you don't push someone into vulnerability, you invite them into it, and you let them step in at their own pace. Love is never rushed. It unfolds slowly like the petals of a flower that only opens when it feels the sun. And people, too, bloom under gentle warmth. Reflection reminds us that we're always learning, that every experience teaches us something about who we are, what we value, how we love, how we heal. When you reflect, you acknowledge that your heart is a living thing, growing, evolving, shedding old layers, creating new ones. Reflection is not about getting stuck in the past, it's about understanding how the past shaped the present, and how the present can shape the future. Intimacy thrives when two hearts recognize each other beyond the surface, when they sense the unspoken things, the subtle things, the things that can only be communicated through presence. True intimacy is quiet. It doesn't need validation from the outside world. It exists in the moments when two people feel connected without needing to explain why. A loving tone doesn't demand reciprocation. It doesn't need to be returned to be genuine. Love is complete even when it's given quietly, even when it's given without expectation, even when it's simply a way of being rather than something meant to be received. Softness is a form of strength because it refuses to harden even when life gives it reasons to. It chooses compassion over protection, understanding over defensiveness, warmth over distance. Softness is the heart's way of saying, I've been hurt before, but I still choose to open. And that choice is anything but weak. Reflection gives love perspective. It helps us understand not just what we feel, but why we feel it. It helps us articulate emotions that once felt too tangled to express. And when we understand our own hearts better, we can love others with more clarity, more intention, more truth. Intimacy is created through consistency, through showing up, through being present in ways that say, I'm here and I'm not rushing away. It's in the quiet exchange of glances, the soft laughter that escapes without effort, the silences that feel comfortable instead of heavy. Intimacy is built not through intensity, but through sincerity and presence. Love is more than an emotion, it's a language. And when spoken softly, it becomes one of the most powerful languages we have. It speaks through tone,